This week on The Futurists, Steve Suarez.
I'm always the optimist looking at how technology is going to benefit us. I'm sure there are downsides, but as any technology, we have to look at those downsides and make sure that we protect against them.
Welcome back to The Futurists. I am, of course, your host, Brett King. We are getting ready for the Futurists X Summit in September 22nd and 23rd. And we're going to be having some of the talent appearing at the event, coming on the show, talking about what they're going to be doing at the summit. And also, we will be talking about some of the current affairs and topics related to disruption of the future. So, we've got half of the world's top 50 ranked futurists coming along to this event, so it promises to be an excellent event. This week we have Steve Suarez joining us. Steve is going to be on the Next Gen Compute Infrastructure panel on the 22nd, the morning of the 22nd. Steve and I have some shared history together. These days he's the CEO of Horizon X, but previously he was head of global head of innovation, global functions team at HSBC, where, of course, you guys know I did about 10 years with HSBC on the digital side. He's also been, he's a Harvard and MIT alum. He's been a guest speaker at Oxford University. He also has over 30 years of experience in consulting, telecoms, and financial services. Steve Suarez, welcome to the Futurists.
Thank you, Brett, and pleasure to be here.
So, first of all, I wanted to start off with some news. You and I, the first day we got together after, having not seen each other for a long time after the HSBC days recently in Dubai,
Yeah.
the first thing we started talking about was Q Day. Right. And the audience has heard me talk about, Q Day before, but just to refresh people, this is a point in time, sometime in the future, presumably within the next 5 years or so, where we will have a 100,000 qubit stable quantum platform that will be able to break current existing RSA encryption technologies. That's a very brief summary of what we see. And that obviously then compromises a lot of our current infrastructure in terms of information technology, including much of our financial services sector, government communications, even military communications, which is why the US military is spending, billions of dollars on post-quantum encryption technologies. But the reason I bring this up is that this week, as we're recording this show, China has announced their a current model using quantum annealing, which has been able to break 50-bit RSA encryption. Now, this is not the end of the world as far as security goes, but it's a proof of concept. Remember, most of the stuff we're talking about is either 1024 or 2048-bit encryption keys. So a 50-bit encryption key is a long way from that. But as a proof of concept, it shows that as soon as we can stabilize quantum in a platform, we are conceivably going to have a Q day. The evidence is growing. I hope that's a fairly accurate summary, Steve. You're much more of a quantum expert than I am, but tell me what this means for you in terms of the Chinese announcement, and is it a validation of what we've been talking about, or where does this sit in the scheme of things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is the Futurist podcast, right? So we're talking about looking at the future and looking ahead. And I think it's a perfect topic to be talking about. So if you think about what they've done, because this is not the first time they've announced this, they announced that they broke 22. Now they've gone to 50. All of this is about scaling. You got to start somewhere. And the fact
Yeah.
that they've proven that out means that once a quantum computer gets strong enough and you get your hands on it, you'll be able to break that type of encryption. The reason I find this field fascinating is that this is going to be the greatest, largest upgrade of human technology in our whole lifetime. So every encryption, every cryptography that exists today will have to get upgraded because
Using
of
quantum. Yeah.
exactly. And so and that's a huge opportunity. I mean, if you think about cybersecurity, I think the numbers for 2027 are like $24 trillion. That's 24 trillion, where the opportunity is. And so everything relies on trust.
Yeah.
Banking, airlines, everything. And so if you do anything to compromise that trust, then a lot of organizations get incredibly disruptive. And I think the smart organizations today are exactly the way you said, Brett. They're looking at it today, especially governments are looking at it today and to see how they're bringing it. So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing it. I can tell you one thing, Brett. Once it does get cracked, I can guarantee they won't be telling you that it's been cracked,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a window where state actors are using this technology, obviously, in a surreptitious manner, and trying to break. Even we saw with the Chinese weather balloons, right, over the US doing data collection, essentially data mining encrypted communications for a period of time when they knew they would be able to decrypt them using quantum. So we know that state actors are preparing for this moment. So they must be pretty convinced it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, if it goes back to, and if you look at Shor's algorithm is an algorithm that was developed especially for to look at this and to be able to break it in combination with Grover's. So I think the good news is this technology not only could do this, but it also is part of the solution. So it can also protect you. So we
Yes.
can use quantum to
Yes.
protect ourselves as
Quantum
well.
encryption.
Exactly. And that's where people that are ahead of the game, starting to look at it now, will be able to do it easier and will be able to do it cheaper. If you're waiting until it happens, then that's a
Yeah.
pretty bad place to be.
Yeah, look, I think this is one of the reasons that I say if you look at the newer players in the market, the Stripes, the new banks, and so forth, just because they're on, they're primarily cloud-based architecture. Plugging in, post quantum encryption into the cloud is going to be something that all of the cloud providers are already working on, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're going to be able to
exactly.
turn that on as a service in the cloud layer fairly simply, right? But that gives these organizations a fairly significant, technical adaptation capability that we don't necessarily see in the big banks and the big hospitals and so forth, because most of these organizations were built in the 60s and 70s. From an architecture perspective, they didn't think like we think about that technology infrastructure today, and migrating off those old core systems in banks and going into the cloud is a lot more difficult. So I see, I don't think newer institutions, the fintechs and the new wallet schemas, Pix in Brazil, Alipay and the wallet schemes in China, the UPI layer, in India, these can theoretically, because they're on new technology stacks, will be able to sort of have post quantum encryption algorithms, in there fairly simply. But a regional bank in the US, that has a rented core, maybe, but it could be a challenge, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's why it's important to really understand your position, go in and grab an inventory. Like you said, a lot of vendors are going to put this in their applications. Let's just use Apple or Zoom, for example. They've already implemented PQC within their devices. So Apple launched last year, they called it PQ3,
Right.
where if you're sending messages, you're already protected with post quantum cryptography. Zoom also implemented. So you're going to find a lot of the vendor products. Absolutely, it's going to be part of their upgrade. It's going to be part of their security. But most legacy organizations, like you mentioned, Brett, have a lot of legacy systems. And
Mm.
you've got to first do an inventory of all the cryptography that you have, and then also prioritize which cryptography are most vulnerable to attack, and then set that up. And a lot of people today don't even know what they have. And
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of the first things that people need to do a full inventory of all the cryptography, understand that. And all that takes time. And so that's
Yeah.
why some of the things that I consult with customers is, start now, understand the landscape. And the reality is it doesn't have to be expensive. I know you threw in some very big numbers that the government's doing, and justifully, they got to create military grade communications. But organizations can start right now, prepare and understand. I always say that waiting is not a strategy. So come up
Mm.
with a strategy on how you're, and I look at it holistically around quantum, not only the threats of quantum, but I also talk about the opportunities
Quantum
of
as a tool.
quantum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that for both quantum and AI at the moment, you'd have to really ask about that organization strategy, right? Because, it's pretty clear that in both of those cases, we're going to have some fairly significant architectural changes, there's no disadvantage to getting into this space early.
It's knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. So, tell me a bit more about Horizon X. I
Yeah.
presume by you talking about this process that a lot of the consulting work you do around quantum innovation is tied up in this sort of more methodical approach to pressure testing or stress testing organizations on this front.
I think that's part of it. I mean, so if just to back up a bit, if you know the three horizons of innovation, so Horizon 1 is incremental innovation, Horizon 2 is bringing innovation that exists in the world into your organization, and then Horizon 3 innovation is completely disruptive innovation, stuff that does not exist in the world. And when I first started, Brett, and I left HSBC, I thought, okay, I'm going to call my company Horizon 3 because all I want to focus on
Sure.
is the disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation takes a long time, a lot of money, and it's incredibly risky. So who's going to wait 5 years before I can show some value? And so
Mm.
that's where I came up with Horizon X, where I work and help organizations in all three horizons to really drive innovation. So I'm focusing on strategy. I do innovation strategy, AI strategy. Obviously, a lot of people is main attention on that. But then I also think about that Horizon 3, and I put quantum in that Horizon 3 and work on that to help organizations sit down, write a strategy, understand what the opportunities are and also what the threats are. But I also educate boards. So as a board member myself, I've got a course at MIT that I'm part of, and I teach the strategy part of quantum computing in that course.
This is
And
at the Media Lab, or
no, this is with the MIT X Pro. So it's live
okay?
out there. It's called Quantum Computing Strategy and Impact. And so the strategy part, which is kind of the last part of the course, is really around telling organizations how do you prepare yourself, how do you structure it, and I have this concept of quantum vigilance, which is looking at the outside market. Right, you don't have control of this, but what are the players, how well are they developing the hardware, the software, how great are the quality of those qubits getting. So that's the vigilance side. This is something you're looking at the external market. And then the vigilance side, which is what are you doing internally and how are you responding? So, what use cases are you trying out? What POCs are you trying out? And how would your company, putting the technology readiness aside, change your business model once this technology gets better? And that intersection between both is where that opportunity lies. So it's
Mm.
being part of the futurist is understanding where and when should we act and where can we get that
Right, the
benefit.
super
And so
forecasting. Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. We normally like to talk with our guests about their methodology as a futurist. Let's start a little bit differently before we get into methodologies here
Okay.
in terms of this. But let's talk about your journey as a quantum futurist. And
Yes.
how did what's your background? How did you how and when did you diverge into the quantum space, and what was the driver behind that?
Well, I was part of the bank for many years. I ran transformation, so I ran a lot of change management type programs. Did it in Europe, and I was with the bank 20 years, and then ran risk compliance and financial crime in the group. And so the reality was, people were like, "How do you innovate within those functions and kind of drive that?" And so part of me was trying to figure out, how do I use that as to drive innovation. And so I did that for many years at the bank, and then I finally started looking at AI and looking at all these emerging technologies to see how it could actually impact the bank, and seeing the bank that's in 64 countries and how big it is. Any type of innovation could have a remarkable impact. And so I got into AI and started looking at how AI was going to benefit. And this was early on. So we were talking to OpenAI very at the beginning. But then a team came to me and talked to me about quantum computing. And then I started understanding it. And I was asked to speak
So,
on a
what
TV.
approximately which year was this?
This was back in 2017. I was asked to speak on television, um, actually on a French television, about quantum computing. And then, I didn't know much about quantum, and my head of quantum was telling me that they didn't want to speak. And so actually they were very nervous. They didn't want to speak in public. And so they asked me, "Hey, Steve, would you mind joining this television thing and talking about quantum?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll talk about quantum." And but the thing is, I didn't really understand what quantum was, so I was a bit nervous, and I didn't like being somebody who does something around trying to prove something that I didn't really know about. And so I did this thing. It went really well.
But I
And
mean, it's
after,
also how you learn, right?
yeah.
Frankly, I mean, that's how, and also you prepare for those types of interviews. So you're going and doing readings, getting your skills up to speed. You talk about it once, you get better at it. Yeah, it's how it works, bro.
I know it how it works, but I'm not like the kind of guy that goes and takes it till I make it. And so
Right.
it went really well, and I got interviewed by a lot of the big magazines, a lot of newspapers, and stuff like that. And that's when I made the decision to go back to school. And I went back to MIT. I took their 4 courses on quantum computing, educated myself. And as I started educating myself, Brett, I started finding out, wow, this is incredibly powerful. And I started seeing the future potential of this. And kind of like yourself, I'm always thinking not where things are now, but where are they going to be? And how do I line myself so that I'm
Mm.
ready to take advantage of that? And I
Yeah,
saw
fair
quantum
enough.
computing as one of those technologies to do that. And so I educated myself. And the more I learned, the more I kind of fell in love with it, and saw what it needed to be done. And now I'm fully engaged in it and looking at it from many different perspectives. And even today, people talk about, Steve, you're a quantum expert. I'm still learning. And
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that there's
Well,
many
it's a
people that can
developing
call
field,
themselves.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So,
But I mean, yeah,
yeah, that's how I
uh,
got in.
cool. Um, so then coming back to the futurist piece of this, the
Yeah.
methodology piece, you talked about Horizon 3.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about Horizon 3, tell us about that process, and how much of that involves you looking at sort of leading edge quantum research. Who are you speaking to be able to have that sort of clarity around Horizon 3?
Well, I'm very lucky. I'm surrounded by great people like yourself, Brett, and people that I can bounce ideas at the university, at MIT and Harvard, and different organizations, and kind of see. I get access to a lot of different things, and I think part of where I feel like I add a value is the kind of the intersection, right? How do you bring these things together to really have 1 + 1 = 11? And there's a lot of opportunities in this intersection of technologies.
Mm.
These technologies are amazing. You have a lot of technologists that know their stuff very well. sometimes you need integrators and people that
Yeah.
know how to kind of communicate and see the value between, you see something on this side, something on this side, and you can see by bringing these two things together, it can have a great opportunity. So I surround myself with very smart people, much smarter than myself. I listen to them, I work with them, and then I start thinking about, okay, how does this apply because of my experience in banking? How does it apply to banks? What should banks be starting to think about and organizing and structuring? And so those are the kind of solutions and things that I think about, sometimes ahead of time, too ahead of time. But then eventually it catches up and people say, hey, Steve, can you come in and help us on this journey? So, I
Okay.
think that's kind of the approach that I do today with my clients.
Mm. All right. So we're going to take a quick break, but before the break, we have this little segment that we like to do, which is called the lightning round, so people can get to
Okay.
know you a little bit. So we're just
Yeah.
looking for short, quick answers. I'm going to
Okay.
try and quantify it because normally it's about your experience as a futurist, but I want to talk a little bit more about quantum. So here we
Sure.
are. Let's get into the lightning round. So, what was the first mention of a quantum computer that you can recall,
It
or
was
where it piqued your
during
interest?
Nature magazine in 2018, I believe it, October 2018, where Google announced that it achieved quantum supremacy. And then all the banks thought, oh, all of our RSA technology is gone, and
Yeah.
scared the hell out of everybody.
Okay, cool. What technology do you think has most changed humanity?
Oof. Um, Air conditioning. Living
Where
in
are you sitting
Dubai
in Miami right
and
now? Huh? In
I'm
Dubai,
sitting in
yeah.
my yeah. I mean, can you imagine
Actually, it's
going from no air conditioning? Imagine
yeah.
that's more than 10 times better than
No, I
not
was going to
having it.
say it is a pretty cool technology.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. Name a quantum theorist or an entrepreneur that has influenced you in your life and your career.
I would say Peter Shor. I mean, Peter Shor he wrote Shor's algorithm, which is the algorithm. And actually, he's kicked off the whole quantum, made quantum mainstream. So he's one of the big pioneers around quantum. I think the other one that's a bit boring is Einstein, but everybody says Einstein. And he always called quantum spooky action at a distance,
Yeah,
only because
spooky
he
action.
knew
Yeah,
that it's hard to understand. So getting your head
yeah,
around it is incredible.
yeah.
So
We
I
need
know
those
this is lightning.
Heisenberg uncertainty Heisenberg compensators. Remember from Star
Yeah,
Trek?
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there a fictional depiction of quantum computing that is fairly accurate of what you think the world will be like in the future?
What was this? Black Mirror had an episode. I don't know if you saw it, that they were using a quantum computer.
Oh, she was
And
doing the time shifting, changing the probabilities and stuff. Yeah, that was
exactly.
interesting.
I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty interesting. And I think some of the power and the different simulations and being able to
Mm,
do differently, that's way down but it, it,
wow.
it will be very interesting.
Wow. All right. Well, very, very interesting. All right. You're listening to The Futurists. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back after that break more from Steve Suarez. And we're going to talk about quantum AI. So we'll be back.
Hi, this is Rob Tursik from the Futurist Podcast, which is part of the Provoked Media Network. I'm excited to tell you about some news. The Futurist is expanding into the real world. We're doing a live event in Dubai. Now, folks who listen to the Futurist Podcast, you're going to be familiar with the fact that my co-host Brett King has been working very hard in Dubai and other parts of the Middle East for a long time. And for more than a year, he's been putting together this event, and now with the help and support of MasterCard and Emirates MBD and many other partners, we are putting together the world's largest futurist meeting in Dubai. It will take place at the fabulous Jumeirah Beach Hotel in Dubai, and it'll be on the September 22nd and 23rd this year. So just a few weeks from now. The speakers are going to include some of the world's leading futurists and forecasters and future thinkers. People like Brian Cox and astronaut Scott Kelly. And of course, Brett and I will be there to conduct interviews and introduce some of the other folks. We've got speakers from around the world. And if you're interested in meeting futurists in person and participating in an event that attracts the future-minded, please join us on the 22nd and 23rd of September. You can learn more about it at futuristevent.com. That's futurist singular event.com. It's all one word, futuristevent.com. And that'll tell you all about the event. I sure hope to see you there in Dubai on the 22nd and 23rd of September. Thanks.
Welcome back to the Futurists. I am your host, Brett King, and in the guest chair today is Steve Suarez, the CEO of Horizon X. And is it Horizon X or is it Horizon X Quantum AI Innovation, Steve?
It's Horizon X.
Okay, all right, cool.
As an entrepreneur, you got to be able to pivot. So I don't want to lock myself into anything.
All right, but let's talk about quantum AI. In terms of here's the thing that I have trouble grasping. So you may have a thesis on this or, some thinking. Quantum is still sort of inherently unstable right now. We're looking at more qubits or chip topology in the case of Majorana, for example, to stabilize, those quantum computers. But for the type of weighting systems that we see in LLMs, I wouldn't see a huge amount of benefit at trying to store massive amounts of data in the quantum on quantum computers. So the AI component is probably still going to be on classical silicon, but where does quantum fit in the AI puzzle in the future?
Yeah. So there's two sides. There isn't the quantum memory, right? To use quantum computing, you actually have to get the data into a quantum state, which is not something. So it wouldn't really be used in that way. So the way I'm looking at it right now is that AI is going to help quantum. So AI is going to help quantum by identifying error correction. And error correction, like you said, it's unstable and stuff. And really being able to predict where the errors are, how do you fix it, and get better error correction, which actually makes quantum even more powerful.
Right.
By reducing.
Because that's why we talk about the 100,000 qubit target, because it's an error correcting milestone, right, or level.
That's right. Yeah. You need obviously, you need parts of those qubits to focus on error correction, and then the qubits to kind of do computation and work on that. So I see AI at first really helping quantum. And circuit design. There's a lot of different angles to where AI is going to be actually an enabler to make quantum better, faster, and for us to get higher quality qubits. Eventually, and this is kind of the thought process, is that quantum will be able to help create data sets then that will now feed into AI to make the AI LLMs even better. That's still yet to be proven, but that's kind of some of the hope and working. So I see both of these two technologies working hand in hand. But at first, it's going to be AI helping quantum. I know people are out there talking about quantum AI. But I think that's going to be coming.
It's a marriage of quantum and AI, right?
That's right. That's right.
And to be fair, also in terms of the weighting systems as well, if we're using sort of the probability element of quantum, there could be elements in sort of the not recursive learning, but that sort of is emerging in the LLMs now. I forget the exact terminology, but so let's get a bit sci-fi, bro. We like to do that on the show. In the second half of the show, we do like to talk a little bit more about what the future of the world is going to be like. So let's do it in a couple of stages. Let's talk about the next 10 years and what quantum is going to bring to the table in terms of the potential for scientific breakthroughs, where it's going to be applied in medicine and so forth, in scientific endeavors. and then after that, we can discuss that, and then let's get a bit more sci-fi. Let's talk about 2050s and things like that, the far future, which is right on the edge of that Horizon 3 stuff you talk about. So, just in the sort of nearer term, in the next 5 to 10 years, as quantum really starts to become usable on a sort of an industrial scale. What's the world going to look like, and what are the major changes you are expecting to come from this?
Yeah, I would say the first thing, and it's going to be everybody, it's a stronger communication, more military grade communication, being able to be delivered through quantum key distribution. So truly using quantum technologies to help. And so if you know about quantum, it's a qubit is like in a superposition until it
Yep.
gets measured.
Right.
And if you see that your data is being measured, then you know somebody is spying on your data. So unless it's not being measured and that encryption stays connected because you know somebody's not looking at your data, you're being protected. And so unless somebody knows how to break the laws of quantum physics, they're not going to be able to kind of break
Right.
this type of technology. So to me, it is an opportunity, and I think using the power of superposition, the entanglement power of where you have one atom on this part of the universe and another one on this, and there's instant
Sure.
communications between them. Understanding how to use that technology, I think, is going to be great. So I would say. Um, I would start with quantum communication and safer communication, internet, safer, even from deep fakes, that type of stuff is
Mm.
using this technology to come up with a way to eliminate passwords. And so think
Yep.
about me kind
Yeah.
of proving
Passwords
that
have to go.
yeah,
Passwords have to
exactly.
go in this world. You
Yeah.
can't have passwords in the quantum world. Yeah.
So eliminating passwords. I know that people talk about facial recognition and audio authentication, but I don't know if you've seen Sam Altman's last video talking about how AI has, pretty much removed those type of authentications
Yeah.
because you can easily, with AI, be able to spoof or fake different people. And so I think from a password and protection perspective, I'm seeing it as a good actor in all of this. Is how we're going to use it to help protect people's data, and as we're becoming more and more digital, use that on that side.
Mm.
I would say in energy. I don't know if you know this, Brett, but right now we spend about 1.2% or even more of the world's energy to create ammonia.
Right.
And people are like, well, why do you create ammonia? Well, ammonia creates fertilizer, fertilizer creates food. And the only reason we spend so much energy in this world to do that is because we don't know how nature simulates that process. And so using quantum to help us simulate it and being able to create that much less energy, um, from a global warming perspective, from an energy consumption, will have a great impact. So think
That's
about
a good
better
example. I
batteries.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about better batteries,
Yep.
right? And so,
Including carbon nanotube tech and stuff like that can be
exactly.
engineered with the help of quantum. Yeah.
Yeah. So things that are optimized or you can simulate, this is where quantum is promising to have an impact. And then in pharmaceuticals, imagine, you could come up with a way that we can design drugs that understands your DNA,
Right.
understands kind of the drug, and it's more personalized. So
Yeah.
that
Which
you
against
could have personalized method.
the Collison guys are working on a synthetic cell right now,
Mm.
and so you can start if I can build a synthetic cell, then and I can apply quantum with the qubit structure, then theoretically I could do a synthetic organism, right? I could do a real digital twin of you, and I could
Exactly.
plug that in and find out specific pharmaceutical that I could design for your specific condition, taking into account your DNA, etc. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild to
Is
think
and
about it.
and I think it's important to understand that it- our it's our creativity that's going to know how to use this technology. So there are things that we can't even conceive of today that this technology will help us have an impact. So to me, I'm excited. I'm always the optimist, looking at how technology is going to benefit us. I'm sure there are downsides, but as any technology, we have to look at those downsides and make sure that we protect against them.
Well, one of the downsides. Well, it's both a downside and an upside theoretically, but I talk about the possibility of radical transparency produced by
I love
Q-Day.
that.
Because if you think about it, if there isn't, in respect to, let's say there's a ton of legacy communications at someone's mind somewhere, and all of this stuff comes out, who really killed JFK, and I don't know, right? But it could be this period of where you have an adjustment period where these major institutions, particularly in communication fields and politics and things like that, have not been able to do the quantum readiness thing, and suddenly all of this information en masse comes out, and it's going to be difficult because AI is also going to be generating a ton of content at the same time, and that could be manipulated quite heavily. So it's going to be a very information dense society. But in that same way, that may, philosophically speaking, it may produce a shift towards much more openness or much more honesty in the world, or much more. I don't know. I mean, humans haven't exactly proven themselves to be masters of this domain from a philosophy or an ethics perspective. So, there's certainly a question. But that's one of the things I think about. What could quantum do in terms of sort of radical transparency that opens up all of these things for discussion that have been hidden, sort of underground before, or suppressed from an informational perspective.
I mean, ideally, that would be fantastic to be able to do that. But you also have the bad state actors that are going to be creating deep fakes and manipulating data, and even taking what people say and completely changing the narrative. So
But I think AI is going. I mean, we're within a very very short period of AI being able to do that. We don't need quantum for that, right? So
no. I know, yeah.
I mean, when you look at some of the videos being produced on these platforms right now, it's still not great. But if you look at the improvement that has happened just in the last 12 months and you extrapolate that, then there's pretty much no doubt that you're going to see content online that is indistinguishable from the real thing fairly quickly. And 100%. We don't have a plan to deal with this stuff,
Right.
It's
like, who's the author that it's real? Who's going to be the authority to say, hey, this is real, this is factual? And that's where, and there's so much content going to be out there that, it's
so even AGI, even an emergent AGI isn't necessarily going to be a source of truth, because what we're learning more and more about these models is that as they're trained on human behavior and human data, they exhibit very human-like traits, including self-preservation and things like that. So I don't know that we could depend on AGI to be the source of truth either. But that's why we have to have an emergent source of truth, because the
Absolutely.
more of that problems that gets introduced into the society, the more acute that problem's going to become, until we as a species say, all right, we have to have at least a clear understanding of facts, and not be able to negotiate facts, and we have to be able to agree on certain standards of information, that should be enforced or reinforced, at least, or incentivized in society. 100%. But I don't know. All right, let's get a bit futurist then.
Yeah.
Take us out to 2050s. how, what do quantum computers look like in the 2050s? Like, what sort of scale of compute and qubit infrastructure could we see by then, for example?
Without a doubt, there'll be smaller computers. There'll actually be multiple types of computers. There's going to be the people who use superconducting, so that's kind of cooling the computer down to almost a 0 Kelvin. Manipulating. It's all going to be done on the cloud, so nobody's going to have a quantum computer at their house. It's all going to
Right.
be accessible. So um,
But everyone
keep
will have access to quantum.
everybody will have access to quantum, and but most of the large organizations are going to have access to latest quantum and that types of machines. So that's why it's important for the people. So to work in quantum, you actually have to it's going to be a different paradigm of coding. It'll be a different paradigm of using it. And so that's why I believe that the early people that will have access will have the talent, will have access to the best machines. And I think it gives such a first user advantage that it's so huge above everybody else that whoever gets in early are the ones that are really going to benefit from it exponentially than others. And so I see a lot of consolidation in the industry. And there's going to be people that are going to be using this technology, especially for optimization or simulation and communication, which is kind of the security part of it. And so think about governments all kind of working to make sure that from a quantum computer that they have that. It's going to be helping us get into space, doing type of space mining and space computing, and even computing from space. And delivering energy. And I think part of it is, how do you transport energy through things like lasers and stuff like that, and this way you can power. I think it's going to open the technologies to be able to give us a lot of different things that we can't just imagine today. So better energy, um, better logistics. I'm hoping a better way of living for you and I, so we can actually live a lot longer than we do and stay a lot younger.
Well, the whole longevity thing's an obvious area for development on the quantum side, but it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
The exponential compute power that we're going to have and the problems we're going to be able to solve, it's sort of like a superpower for humanity, really. Quantum, even more so than AGI, because quantum's going to change our fundamental understanding of the universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty wild. I mean, the fact that we're going to live to see this stuff is pretty exciting.
It is, and I think that's kind of what. But I think it goes back. People today, including myself, don't know the power of this technology and what it's going to solve, and it's going to solve so many different things. I think it's the exciting part, and me being part of this journey, seeing the pioneers in this industry push forward, but really learn with them and grow with them. I'm lucky and fortunate to be part of kind of the group of people that kind of take us into that and look at
Well,
that.
we're lucky to have you on the team, bro. So we're lucky to have you on the
Yeah.
show, and we're also I'm looking forward to hearing your conversation at the summit. What are you going to be talking about? What do you think you'd like to discuss on stage at the summit? Give our audience a little bit of a trailer.
I like talking about quantum. I like talking about innovation, but I think a lot of people are going to be talking about security. And right now, a lot of people that ask me to come and speak, a lot of big banks. I have a big, right before the show, I've got some of the top banks have asked me to go to Dubai. Well, I'll be there in Dubai to talk about this. And then obviously I'm excited to be talking at your Futurists and meet the amazing people. I know you have an amazing lineup, and I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate to be part of that lineup with those and just kind of hear from them. And
Yeah.
I could tell you, Brett, where I learn a lot is going to conferences like your conference and kind of hearing the
Same.
possibilities and what's going out and getting connected up, because that also expands my mind, which is why, those type of conferences I learn a lot, and able to take a lot back with me to say, all right, what does this mean for the future?
Well, make sure to invite some people along as well. So,
I sure will.
you do get an allocation of some tickets as a
Oh,
speaker.
excellent.
So,
Well, yeah. I'm sure
but
once people listen to this, they're already going to be pinging me to say,
it's been
I
a
want a
fun
ticket, Steve.
conversation. Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a fun conversation. Hey, listen, how can people find out a little bit more about you, about Horizon X, and what you're working on right now?
Yeah. I mean, we can go to horizonxc.com, or you can email me at steve@horizonxc.com. Obviously, I do a lot on LinkedIn. I publish a lot of thought leadership um, things there. If you really want to learn, if you don't mind, Brett, I'll kind of put a plug in
Sure,
for the class.
of course.
I've got this MIT strategy class that I think is going to be key. We created this class because we didn't want it to be too technical. We know senior executives don't have a lot of time, and we wanted to take out all the fluff and get straight into the value. And so part of this class is to give executives very short, concise way to understand what is quantum, what are the opportunities, what are the threats, and how do you develop a strategy around it. It's all based online, and it's completely catered for executives. And I can send you a link. We could put it in.
Yeah, no, please
And
send it to Elizabeth, our producer, and we'll make sure it gets out on social as well.
yeah. And if you do all caps Horizon X, you get right now they're running a 17% discount. And that's not
There
only
you go.
on my course, but the other 4 courses on quantum and the entire catalog that we have access to on MIT X Pro. So even if you don't want to take this course, you want to take an AI course, if you want to take an engineering course or a leadership course, you still get that discount across all
All
these
right, cool.
courses. So,
Fantastic.
yep.
Well, that's a great way to finish out the show. So thank you, Steve. Appreciate you coming on, and going to look forward to hearing more on stage on September 22nd and 23rd at the Futurists Summit. And thanks again. That's it for the Futurists this week. Yeah, thanks. That's it for the Futurists this week. And make sure you stay tuned for more content that's going to be appearing at the summit. Don't forget, save the date, September 22nd and 23rd for Jumeirah Beach Hotel. And you can go to futuristevent.com to find out more information. I'm your host, Brett King. We're going to wrap it up. But thanks for joining us again on the Futurists, and we'll see you in the future.
Well, that's it for the Futurists this week. If you like the show, we sure hope you did. Please subscribe and share it with the people in your community. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. That really helps other people find the show. And you can ping us anytime on Instagram and Twitter at Futurist Podcast for the folks that you'd like to see on the show or the questions that you'd like us to ask. Thanks for joining. And as always, we'll see you in the future.